I'm telling you, man, he's a whisperer. He sniffs them out.
Where'd you find it, under a rock or? No, he's just crawling on the surface. Yeah, you know, usually.
Well, I'm Dr. Matthew Niemiller from the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Today we are doing a cave biological inventory, trying to document all species of different critters ranging from salamanders to bats to crustaceans to spiders and whatnot, in hopes of gaining important knowledge about the distribution of many of these species, their abundance, information about their ecology and life history if possible, and for those species that are of state and federal concern, whether they might be present and how those populations are doing. So two main projects that we're working on right now are kind of getting a better understanding of some cave beetles. So there was a rather famous cave biologist from the University of Kentucky, Tom Barr, who passed away a few years ago, who was the foremost researcher in North American cave carabid beetles. He described dozens of taxa. So currently there's roughly about 150 described species, many undescribed species that were in manuscript that Dr. Barr was working on at the time of his passing. And unfortunately, no one's really kind of picked up that mantle since he passed away. So myself, Dr. Keith Phillips at Western Kentucky University, and Dr. Karen Ober at Holy Cross College have kind of taken up that mantle in hopes of better understanding what species we have present, whether some of the species that he was working on are really comprised of one unique species, or are they multiple different lineages that we need to consider and have different management strategies for. Another project we're working on is trying to get a better understanding of some different groups of cave millipedes. So these are the small, little white, hairy little millipedes that you might see crawling around in muddy cave passages from time to time. They all look really similar. Unfortunately, for the best way for us to determine what species is what morphologically is we have to collect them, take them back to the lab, and dissect out the genitalia of the males. But what we can use now is genetic data. So we could take a little tissue sample, collect a specimen, and get a better understanding of species relationships that way. In terms of many other fauna, we have major knowledge gaps. So despite living here in Kentucky, and there's been cave biological research that's dating back almost 200 years, like the Mammoth Cave System, we still don't know. We're finding new species every year in caves in North America, even in here in Kentucky. We don't have really poor knowledge about the distributions of any of these species. So the vast majority, literally 90% of the cave adapted or the cave obligate species that we have here in North America are known from 5 or fewer caves. So an important question is whether do these species, are they really rare, so that represent their true rarity, or is it just because we've not sampled enough caves to really determine what their overall range is? And it's probably a little both, depending on the species in question. But we need to do our due diligence and continue to inventory cave systems like this biologically to determine and try to answer that question. So one thing we have found is, one thing to consider is roughly 5% of caves in North America have probably been adequately biologically inventoried. So we're not counting, bat counts, going into a cave just doing a bat count. We're talking about a situation like today where we go in and we try to document all the flies that are present, all the spiders, all the millipedes, all the salamanders. And when you realize that there's 50,000 plus caves in North America alone, that's probably an underestimate even. Very few caves do we have adequate knowledge about. So there's vast opportunities for new discoveries, new species to be found, new range extensions and whatnot. So that's what we're trying to do here today. One thing that I wish everyone would, I would hope that everyone at some point in their lifetime could, at least, even if you're claustrophobic, go to a commercial cave, just experience what it's like to be in complete darkness and realize that there's life even in these extreme conditions. So the fact that we can find, life in complete darkness, often with very limited food resources, really unique forms of life, things that most people can only dream about or they might see in a sci-fi movie. They might be living below their feet and they have no idea that it's there. And when you're living, in rural areas and you're relying on groundwater, in particular spring water, realize that anything that you throw away or dump on the road eventually is going to work its way down into that same water that you might rely on for bathing, for laundry, for drinking. So to keep that in consideration.